Voices are just incredible, right?
Yeah.
And for me, there's a lot to be said with voices because a sound, like many other sounds we listen to, like birds and animals, are soothing and pleasant, and they also can be, you know, the opposite,
Hmm.
cries for help, but are all good ways to communicate. And personally, I find voices super important,
Yeah.
and it's something that I pay a little more attention to than I think a lot of others.
Yeah, and not just like confidence. I guess you can, typically you can hear confidence or arrogance when it doesn't actually match up with your background of what you know.
Yeah,
But like the first thing you notice when you meet someone is what you see, and the second thing
yeah,
is going to be what you hear.
yeah,
And you learn more about someone from what you hear. But even then, that first little bit, if someone's got a nice voice or something, it can. I definitely think it would help, especially on the phone too. I would always pick up the phone at most jobs. I'd introduce myself. The first thing I would do is ask how someone's doing,
mm.
and then whether they were calling me because they were upset or anything, it always kind of like chilled everything down. And I used. I read a book on negotiating. Chris Voss Never Split the Difference. He was like this old. He's not old, I guess, but he started his work, I believe, in the 70s, 80s with negotiating. So he was in the field for quite a while. That's when he started policing. Doesn't matter. He mentions when negotiating with hostages or even with anyone, if you're concerned about the emotions taking over, he literally calls it the late night FM DJ voice, where you talk very slow,
Low and
low,
slow.
use your inflections.
Yeah.
Like, hey Jay, how's it going?
Yeah,
Well, are you sure you need that much money, or would maybe less money be reasonable?
yeah,
And like asking, well, how am I supposed to do that?
yeah.
Um,
That's a good question.
yeah, that's the number one thing that I took away from it. He says to take away when you're negotiating, ask them, how am I supposed to do that?
And that reminds me of I think there was a fellow called from Black Swan Negotiation.
That's him. That's him.
That is him.
Black Swan Company. That's
Okay.
the guy. That's Chris Voss.
Fantastic. I've seen quite a few things from him, and that's exactly the question that I remembered because it is such a good question.
Yeah, yeah, and I used it like when I used to work for Canadian Pacific Rail in Canada here. I would have to call up municipalities, right? And because I'd have a board order and agreement with municipality that a certain railroad crossing, that the city and the railroad cross, typically dependent on who was there first, which a lot of the time was the railroad. They would be billable for the asset. Like we were there first. You wanted to put a road over our tracks. Our tracks were there first. The board order put together by the Rail Transportation Commission. I can't remember what it used to be called. Like some of the documents that I'm using to enforce are from like 1907. Like really old. It's cool, and you're trying to figure out what they mean and how to interpret everything, like how to interpret them to benefit. Like my job was to benefit the company, so how do I interpret this to benefit the company without harming the relationship with the municipality? And so someone would be like, I'd send off information like a year in advance, like, oh, well, why isn't it mailed? Well, you are one of hundreds, if not thousands, of municipalities that I have to deal with across the network. CP spans all of Canada and into the U.S. We have over 1,000 miles of track. You could probably hear that I've said this a lot, right? And I can't, even just in my little territory, there are so many municipalities I have to deal with that I can't just be mailing everything. It will make it easier. Like I will be able to provide better service to you by sending you an email, and that's why I sent an email. And that is the standard practice of life nowadays between companies, between people, emails, phone calls. I'll send an email, and then I'll call you to try and make sure that you get back to me, make sure you notice. And their response was, well, we can't, afford, or how are we going to get the money or something like that. I said, hey, unfortunately that is not my problem, but I can point you in the direction of these resources where you can request federal funding from the government and this and that. And, oh, well, I can't see why we can't just do this. And I said, well, how am I supposed to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And they get thinking, they're like, oh, yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. So CP exists. It's big. It's got a lot of money, but the biggest thing that I stress is if CP was told you must comply with every request from every municipality, they would go bankrupt within a year. And it's just how municipalities and government work. They will ask and ask and ask. And, you know, CP, and very much when I was in the role, I was constantly trying to work with. And like, if it benefits both of us, like even, you know, if you're ever working with someone, right, and they come to you and say, hey, we got this bill, you know, look at it. Is there other work that you can get done at the same time that they're going to bill you for? Is there something that you guys can do together? And you know what? Sometimes if the community was poor and they're like, you know what, we don't actually need this crossing, can we remove it? I might even remove it for free. Right? Like I might even just be like, because sometimes like the crossing is just like, it's just a bunch of planks.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, I just want you guys to go grab cement blocks and block off the road. As soon as it's blocked off, we're going to come in and we're just going to unscrew these planks and we're going to pull them out, and that's it. We won't charge you for removing the planks. We won't charge you for anything. Just if you're willing to do that, we'll help you, because the net gain from this is that I have now an asset that's no longer fixed, and I'm going to have less, troubles with the track. It's safer for everyone, because anytime you cross a rail track, you know, that is dangerous. Like it's, you know, if it fails, it's catastrophic. And if I can leave happy and you can leave happy, and we're spending money and we're making money, then like that's a good place to be. Yeah,
and to me, there's a lot of social capital in doing something like that for the municipality. And I think I have a follow-up question on that, and that's essentially, how do you envisage working with the UAE government, and maybe do they have municipalities that you need to also align with or work with?
Well, before I get to that, thanks for coming on the podcast. I'll answer that question. This is the Canadian-specific podcast, not specifically about Canada. I'm your host, Jaden Marshall, and today I've got Jay on. Jay, I don't actually even know your last name.
Johnson.
Jay Johnson. That's my goodness. That's like cowboy. It's a cowboy name.
Yeah.
Even, you know, if for our deaf listeners out there that can't hear, Jay's, you know, does not quite sound from Canada. You're from Australia, correct?
Yeah, from Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, Australia. Well, thanks for coming on. Jay and I met at a party and that he hosted. And very interesting. I wanted to get to know him, and I think, well, I'm excited to talk to you. I think everyone should be, if people are listening, they think they'd be interested to hear from you. But you were wondering, how does the municipality system work there? Well, the first thing to note is this railway is being built as part of the GCC countries. While I'm talking, I'm just going to pull up what that means again, but it's 5 Arab countries that want to build a railroad. If I was to put out, I don't know what their official post or stance is, but if I was to put something out, right, I'd be like, try to revolutionize the economy, right? Those would be the words I use. But realistically, it would be to improve logistics in the area. There is a Gulf, there is lots of opportunity to ship things by water, but if you have a railroad connecting all these countries, you know, it's still a vast area. You're going to take trucks off the road, and you know, you can move a lot more industrial stuff with rail than you can on a road. And so I think it'll benefit the area. And you know, like Jay had mentioned, I'm, you know, expected to go over there pretty quick here. It's not, you know, I won't be there until I'm there, so I'm still, you know, lenient. But I'm officially planning the going away party. So that's, you know, I'm committed now to get rid of my stuff. So that's how likely it feels to me. We'll see how that goes, but it is driven by the government. And I think what they're also trying to do is, I talked about crossings, specifically I talked about at-grade crossings. Those are dangerous. But if you have a separated grade crossing, that's where, you know, either the road or the railway goes over the road. Typically the railway is going to stay put because it's hard to get those, you know, to adjust the track for the trains to go over the rail than, say, having a road go over the rail. The trains to go over the road, then the road to go over the rail. So, but let's see, GCC countries. What does it stand for again? I wonder if this is like a translation thing. Gulf Cooperation Council. There you go. And It's Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and Oman.
Okay.
Oman? I hope I pronounced that right. And yeah, so because it's top down directed, and very much more government run, I think how that will be established, they'll probably have a really good, like municipal relations department set up, and because it's been freshly built, they probably had like lots of talks beforehand, like we're going to put a railroad through here. Can we look at separating the grade for the crossing? I don't expect there'll be tons of at-grade crossings because they have the opportunity to build it now. Separated grade crossings are much more expensive than at-grade crossing, but you have to maintain at-grade crossings a lot longer. Like a separated grade crossing can be viewed as like a bridge. And some of the bridges at CP have been up for, hundreds of years. Sorry, over 100 years. Railroad's not that old, but very old. I think it's 1881 was when CP started. Probably should have had that memorized while I was there, but I don't work there anymore. But that was the OG railroad in Canada, the original one that was built, and went across Canada, connecting it east to west. And then roads were built after, and trying to build separated grade roads in the 1800s. No. So they would have all been crossings at grade, and they have to be repaired. They should be going. If done right, if you got a good subgrade, good road bed, and the road itself is also in very good condition, you could get probably 12 to 15 years out of it before having to do another reconstruction. And a reconstruction is cutting everything out, putting everything back in. All new material, ballast, all that, and it can be quite pricey. They can be anywhere from $150,000 up to like $300,000 up to. I did one in Calgary, so there was a traffic circle in Calgary, and 2 railroad tracks that went right through the center, like a piece of modern art. Engineering nightmare.
Yeah,
and we had to fix it, and the drainage was in the area was awful, and I ended up lifting one of the tracks, I believe, like 8 inches, which is a lot.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. Like, that's a lot of ballast material because, it was a lot, and it was expensive, and I don't think I can say the price. I'm not sure why. I'm just not going to say the full price, but I'm pretty sure it definitely came north of $500,000. By up to like 50 or 100% more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what the end bill is going to come out to, because that would have been figured out this fall after I left. But that was kind of like one of the last major projects that I worked on, and it was beautiful when I left. Like, I was so happy with it.
Oh, good.
But I was sitting there thinking, like, we have to come up with a plan to separate this crossing. We have to, the next time we do this, spend the extra couple $1 million, might even be tens of millions of dollars, separate the grade, and just never do this again.
Yeah.
It's just such a pain, because if one track goes out of alignment, it can have issues on, like, it can start, like, it'll like, it's very slow, but like the earth will move.
Yeah.
It will move very slowly, but if set up right, it won't move. It'll move slower than it would if it not set up properly. And yeah, it's we put in really good material, and it should be good to go. But that was a nightmare project to plan, and a lot of money and materials. And they asked me to reschedule it because of the playoffs, because the Calgary Flames were in the playoffs.
Wow.
And I don't follow hockey. I only follow hockey when the Oilers are in the playoffs, really. And that's just because, Edmonton area, everyone followed the Oilers. So, I was watching in 2006 as a kid,
Yeah.
and then just like never watched since. But I was flabbergasted, because I was like, you realize, like, sure, there's, there might be issues with people getting to the game, but we need to get this fixed right away. And once it's fixed, like, the benefits will be huge. And like, no, like, just push it to the right a couple of days or left. I was like, there's real money investments in this, because you're now offsetting my shift So that adds more time because people are going to be like shutting down, and then a new crew is going to come in and start up. So it might take an extra day, and like it's just going to move everything around. And the municipality, the person who's in charge of like roads is not the same person who's in charge of road closures, if I remember correctly. And I was talking with the city, and this other group's like, well, we'll be there, don't worry about it, but like I don't have a permit or anything for you until you know this other group, like this other person that works for the city of Calgary contacts me and asks for it. And I was like,
Wow.
what can I ask for it? Like what? Like what's? I'm gonna bill the cost back to you. Can I ask for it now? How much is it gonna cost? I'm gonna bill it back to you, and I'm gonna put Canadian transportation approved overheads can be up to like 40%. So it's like if you do this, I'm just gonna make money off you, but like you need to get me this. Just not just do it, like do the paperwork. Just do the paperwork. Do the paperwork so we can do this. Don't put this off, push this off. So yeah. And then over there, I don't know. Over there, I'll be working more like I'm supposed to be a structural engineer. We're looking after their bridges, culverts, camel underpasses, and if they fall within the city, I'll have to learn how to talk to those cities and municipalities, and likely I'd need an interpreter, maybe. I'm not really sure. So that'll be very different.
I think that'll be very different and very similar in many ways.
Yeah, they'll behave similarly. It'll just take longer to translate. And I guess in some ways they'll behave differently because their business norms will be a little bit different. Like if I remember correctly, it's going to be a little bit more chatting, a little bit more talking, getting to know each other first instead of getting right down to business. How's the wife? How's the kids?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm enjoying your country very much. I just went this, and like, long form conversation with tea. And I don't know how long it's going to take. That's going to be something I'm going to have to get used to, but it might be nice in the end. Then when I come back if I ever leave and go somewhere else and it's very regimented, I'm probably going to have a hard time adjusting to that.
Yeah, there'll be a transition period for sure. But I think that'll be something, again, as you mentioned, a different experience, but something that you'll draw from and maybe even enjoy and miss.
Yeah.
Once you do find another project as well after this. What I'm interested to hear is maybe also, will you learn some of the language? Is that on your radar?
I want to. I won't. I'm not supposed to need it for the job though, but I would like to. English is definitely going to be the business language out there. I've got Duolingo. I started trying to do some learning and stuff, and then I kind of got busy this last week. But when I first get there, my wife will be in Canada. I'll be there. Hopefully there's a way we can kind of like pair ourselves up on Duolingo or something where we can challenge each other to get through the courses and make it a competition. But I would love to pick up another language. I was, because, Canada, bilingual, was very interested in picking up French, but outside of Canada, not that useful. Even in Canada, not actually that useful unless you want to become a government worker. It looks good on a resume. Like, that would definitely help, but you'd probably never use it. Or at least I wouldn't for, the industry that I'm sort of in. But, yeah, over there, I think learning something like Arabic would be very interesting. And then you have something that people will instantly latch onto when they meet you later. And then like I'll be able to form a connection with an Arab living outside of the Arabia, the area, and we'll just be able to talk and like very quickly. I think they'd be very friendly, and I think a lot of people like it when you try and learn their language and their culture, and you go there to learn instead of just like set something new up. And I think it'd be very interesting, but I think it'll be very difficult. Completely different alphabet written backwards. Sounds are fairly different, but I don't even know, like, I don't know what a Canadian accent in Arabic is going to sound like. It'll be interesting, but we'll see. Like, I wonder if it'll be like offensive to them or something.
I think it'll be funny.
Yeah, it probably would be.
That's something you should hold on to, because at one point you'll maybe not sound like a foreigner, and you might sound more like a local once your language develops. But initially, I think that's a very good thing to sound a little
Yeah,
different.
I should either translate A or just keep A in my lexicon, even though I'm speaking in a different language.
Hold on to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be so funny. You know, inshallah, A. But yeah, and so speaking about travel and stuff, like you yourself, so you know, you're in Australia. Grew like, can you tell me like your story? Because you didn't just go Australia to Canada. What like how long were like you did you grow up in Australia for? Were you anywhere before Australia, or is that like that's the home ground?
That's home ground.
Okay.
So grew up in the 80s, 90s as a kid in Australia, in Sydney. It was a great time. First travel experience was, well, first living away from home experience was Germany, in Leipzig.
Wow.
A great spot there. I did a gap year for a year. Learned the language there, studied, didn't go to school, which was also a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
the Germans are great, and the Germans are funny.
Wow.
Contrary to the popular belief and simple stereotypes, the Germans are a good time.
I've heard that. Real quick, and then I'll let you get back to it. When I went on tour, my boss was Canadian, but also German, and then did a year or two as like staff college in Germany, and like learned German, and he like. Yeah, I think he said something along those lines. So like they're also funny, and they're there for a good, they're there for a good time too. Like work hard, play hard mentality, and just like it's. I think, is their humor dry, or what is their humor like?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's quite
It sounds very.
with a deadpan delivery too.
Yeah.
It's you have certain characters that's
Okay.
definitely stick out in your mind.
Fair enough. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of. He's definitely, I think, more Canadian humor, but some of his delivery was just like super dry and deadpan.
Yep.
That's right. So you were just in Germany for a year?
Yeah, so I spent a year with a group called EF. They're Education First,
Okay.
which is the brand that I did this exchange with, and so they put me with a host family in Tauha, which is a small place outside of Leipzig. Leipzig itself is a fantastic place. Really good way for me to be exposed to the culture and learn the language. And I think maybe similar to you, it's once I was there, because I didn't speak a lick of German before
Yeah.
I went over there.
Yeah.
Once you're immersed in it and you hear it on the radio, you hear it in conversation, you see it in the paper, once all these things come together, you'll have these different exposure points. Neuroscientists say 6 to 8 exposures, and it kind of sits with us.
Yeah.
So if you have that every day, you're going to pick it up a lot quicker. I know, at least for me, my German, I think after the 6-month mark, it sort of just exponentially just grew. By the end of the year, I was fluent, and I still
Wow.
retain a fair amount. It's still very rusty at the moment,
Yeah.
but it's something that stays with you. And as you said, you have these connections to people and places that you can't foresee in the future.
Yeah.
But if those come across at some point, you have a really good common meeting place with people, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I could imagine the surprise of being German, traveling to Canada, meeting an Australian, and then he just starts speaking German to you.
Yeah,
That would be funny. That'd be something you're gonna tell people about when they get home.
yeah.
They're gonna share the story like, oh, it was beautiful, and there's this one Australian guy in Canada. Oh my goodness, what a ball! That'll be it.
And a Canadian guy who speaks Arabic, right?
Yeah, eventually, hopefully,
Yeah.
I want to try and stick with that. Yeah, but I guess it'll be very Anglo though. I'm still learning, and I hope I'm not. My biggest concern is that I don't want to get there and like know everything, because I won't. And when I went to Kuwait, I did learn a lot. But I think Abu Dhabi is a bit more businessy, and Dubai is a bit more like Las Vegas-y. I think, and I've asked that of people, and most people have said yes. There might be some more nuance to that. So with that though, my concern is practice. But I think if I seek it out, I'll be fine. But if I just don't want to not seek it out and then not practice and try, because if all I'm doing is on my phone, I probably make it work, but I don't. I think it'll be tougher. Did you use Duolingo or anything? How did you learn the language? How did you do that?
So back in 2005,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of Duolingo if it was out by then or any other apps that
Mm-mm.
were around at the time.
I don't
So
think that would have been no.
for me, it was trial and error. Good old fashioned, just, if you're hungry, you got to learn how to ask for something to eat. So you learn the language pretty quickly. So it was school with the host family, and then reading, and then obviously any other communication channels like radio, TV, music.
What is what type of literature is Germany famous for? Do they do? Is there like a set of books? Because I think one country, it might not be Germany, but isn't there a country that they like almost all the fairy tales came from? I don't think it's Germany, but is there something like that German literature is known for?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think it was the Grimm brothers.
Oh, okay.
The Grimm fairy tales. So
Yeah.
they're these, from what I read, grotesque.
Yeah.
Essentially, the stories themselves,
Yeah.
were these kind of grotesque and really sort of nasty, in many ways, stories to, I think, kind of help kids be disciplined,
Yeah.
essentially, and then Walt Disney sort of, fancified them and
Yeah.
made them a lot more appealing to the general public. But I think
Yeah.
a lot of the fairy tales are based off all of the Grimm brothers, which I believe were German as well. I watched a documentary on that, and that was also very interesting. So yeah, that's where they stem from. But even then, that documentary, they looked back years and years and weren't quite sure where the fairy tales came from
Okay.
originally. So before the Grimm brothers put the collection together, that we'd have to do a bit more research on. But that
Huh.
that
And-
was interesting.
and-
Some great musicians out of Germany as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What and so there's some school stuff. You didn't show up to your classes. What did you do? Did you hike lots? Like, what'd you do?
Yeah, so
Okay.
well, Germany was great because so the town that I was in, it was it was Leipzig, and it has a rich history.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, walking around, you think an Australian kid growing up, in Sydney, we have some history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Australia was founded 1788.
Mm-hmm.
So just then, you can think of the architecture that was going on at that period of time
Mm-hmm.
compared to the architecture that had been for many centuries in
Mm-hmm.
what is Europe, which I
Yeah.
find incredible. So for me, walking the streets, I noticed a lot about the architecture, also the German people themselves, how the culture helped define and also guide Germans at the time, and how they um, carried themselves,
Mm-hmm.
which was endearing in many ways. And I was a little not so defined, let's say, and it was great. I have this one photo.
Yeah.
I took, I think it was a disposable camera. I took it
Yeah.
in one of my last days in class, and of course it's dark, right? I mean, Northern Hemisphere people understand that in January, even, you know, even at 7 or in the morning, it's still kind of dark.
Yeah.
And for me, it was another new experience, right? So this is my first eye-opening experience to many things that I had thought were true. And I have one. I just opened the door in class and I snapped a photo, and you just see the teacher's face. It's like, oh, here's Jay again. He's just disrupting class. And of course, I'm late, so, so I'm late.
It's not-
right?
it's not
It's
very German.
Uncommon. So I found
Oh.
I still have that photo at home, and it's funny because I think although I had respect for the school system in
Yeah.
some ways, I also understood that I wanted to try things my way as
Yeah.
well at times, and yeah, so I think I found a good balance there between play and work.
Right on. And then what happened after Germany?
Germany, back to Australia,
Mm-hmm.
finished a business degree. Yeah, after the business degree, got a corporate job
Yeah.
working for a payments company called Tyro in the fintech space. Sales job all over Australia.
Yeah.
The modern
Yeah.
man's
Yeah.
path, right?
Yeah, that's what we get sold.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, I checked out that path. I walked and wandered on that a little bit, and then realized that, that's kind of cool if you want to spend your life, in that sort of pursuit.
Working for the man.
Yeah, and it wasn't really kind of my thing. And so my next opportunity came when I could go to France, actually, and that was at the time when I was applying for the military for intelligence officer as well. I had
Okay.
a moment where I could either go down the military route or head over to France and play some rugby for Monaco and finish off my degree over there, actually. That's right. And so I chose rugby and France, the south of
Oh,
France.
oh no.
Yeah.
It's a hard sell.
Yeah, and I think I like the idea of the military,
Yeah.
personally, just a little bit of structure and the camaraderie. But I think maybe some of the hardline rules, I think I would have struggled with.
Yeah.
So I again chose France, playing rugby and finishing off my degree there, and that was another wonderful experience. Immersed myself in that language, picked up some French.
Wow,
And
yeah.
yeah, that led into a whole number of things.
So, okay, the number of things here. First one, rugby. My brother just started playing rugby, actually, and he played his first game yesterday. Just a couple of years younger than me. And actually, the other team was short players. So the first game he ever played, he played for the other team.
Good man.
And when did you start playing rugby?
So that was back in, I guess, 96,
Okay.
97. So it was
So as a kid.
Yeah, at school.
Okay.
So we have a couple of different rugbies in Australia. So we have
Mhm.
rugby league and rugby union. The common adage for that is rugby league is a gentleman's game played by rogues, and rugby union a is played by gentlemen and a game of rogues,
Okay.
or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So
What-
there is some sort of class distinction there, which is kind of ridiculous.
What is the difference?
Well,
Are there a difference to the rules or just like,
there's,
okay.
yeah, there's a few different rules. Largely a similar game.
Mhm.
You try and put the ball over the other line.
Yeah.
You try and stop the other team,
Yeah.
and how they go about it is just a little bit different. And there's a lot of complexity in that. But for a simple, quick explanation, it's rugby league is you have 6 attempts to try and score,
Mhm.
and then you have to hand over the ball. Whereas rugby union, you keep it as long as you can,
Mhm.
and it's up to the other team to either get the ball from you or to or if they lose it. So
Which one did you play?
I played both. So
Okay.
rugby union at school. So growing up at school, we played rugby union, kind of big in certain circles in Australia, and we played against a number of good schools. So for anyone out there that might listen later on, Newington College and Hunters Hill, some really good rugby schools and good rugby people came out of there. I actually played with one guy who, well, 2 guys. Curtly Beale plays for the national team. Laurie Weeks also played a game for the national team as well. Curtly Beale's done fantastic. He was a year younger than me at school, and even at that stage, you could see he had a lot of potential, great hands, and at that time as well, when I knew him, was really good. That was a boarding school, and
Okay.
that also, I think, had an impact on the players and the team. It's just, dudes being together, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
What else are you
right.
gonna do? I think that goes well. So okay, so then you wanted to join the military as an intelligence officer. Why intelligence? Like, did you know, or did you just go on a website and like pick a couple? Like, I found the number one thing I learned about getting into the military is you have no idea what it's gonna be like on the other side. Like, it's a wall, and now it's probably easier with like more technology, but like, you think you know, but you don't know.
Yeah, and for me, I'm very open
Mhm.
and open to experience, and I think for me, intelligence officer appealed to me apart from pilot. So that was what I was essentially narrowing in on. So that for me was, I would like to. I sort of said to the interviewer, I said, I'm coming here. I want to be an intelligence officer or a pilot, and pilot I pushed aside. So I said I'm here to become an intelligence officer, and that was my goal for that conversation, was to chat to him about that.
And this was like same time when you got like kind of as you were being processed, you got the opportunity to go and you took the other adventure.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just, yeah, it's timing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're left with choices and you make one. So,
Yeah.
and that was it, because we were going to go down to they have a system in Australia, for maybe your Australian comrades, or the Anzacs, like the Royal Military College down in Dunshurun. So I was actually quite looking forward to that experience had I chosen it. But I think, I chose another one, and I think it's just as equally as good.
Yeah, we have the Royal Military College too, RMC, out in Ontario, and yeah, I graduated high school. I was thinking about it, but like like I wasn't, my family wasn't strapped for cash, but it would have probably been nice to like not worry so much about that. And like I used to be a cadet. I didn't tell a lot of people that in the military. If you're a cadet and you're listening to this, when you go into the military, just keep it quiet. Understand where you're at. Like if you're more capable than others, great. Help them.
Mm-hmm.
If just don't. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it is one of those things where like there's enough people have had bad experience with cadets, that it gives a bit of a bad rap, and the bad experience was usually something along the lines of like, trying to correct everyone, and like you're there to learn with people,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to teach your peers. Don't try and teach the staff. Like these are people. This is their job.
Yeah.
Right. You're just starting. Like you had a hobby beforehand. But anyways, it's all fine, and anyone can recover from a fall. I think like if you're like I've seen a lot of people in my military career come in, they're maybe not super switched on, or there's something that's not quite jiving,
Mm-hmm.
but then like with time, all of a sudden like that's like they'll go from that's the person I'm concerned about to that's the person I go to.
Oh, wow.
Like they become like I've seen people become like my go to when I
Mm-hmm.
need something. It's absolutely amazing. But I decided to not apply for RMC. I got in at MacEwan University for engineering, studied engineering. After I finished school, I learned that, RMC would have been terrible. Unless, like, if you're taking an arts degree, and I'm not, I love giving art students a hard time, but like, if this is what you want to do, go do it. Like, I'm not going to tell you no. But if you're taking an arts degree, you have a lot more time. If you're taking an engineering degree or something more related to like work or a job, or just like that very demanding degree,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to do military stuff at the same time while in school, like on the same time, like every single day,
Yeah.
that's going to be rough, and you might not make it through. And then I think because of that, this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't, if you want an engineering degree, I think you will have a better opportunity becoming a good engineer by studying at a regular school than the military school.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the people are bad. They have to do 2 levels of learning, military learning and collegial learning at the university level, versus what I ended up doing, which also probably would be a better engineer if, well, I don't know, it's a weird thing. I did fine in school. At the end of my first year, I applied to join the reserves and work part-time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like one Wednesday a month, a week in a month. It would work as a good part-time job. They promised me 4 summers of training, or just like there was training in the summer. So then in the summers, I knew that I had employment.
Yep.
They then came out after my first year with a full-time summer employment program. So if you're in your first 4 years of the Army, they guarantee you summer job every single year that you want it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
while you're in school. And that was huge, guaranteed work. And so I would, though, like I really enjoyed my time in the military. I didn't always enjoy my time in university. I thought what I learned about was cool, but they really, like, it's so competitive, and like there's a lot of like, in university, there's a lot of cheating going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you're competing. Like I knew when I got there, like, yeah, I never really studied in high school, but I knew there's no way I'm going to be the smartest person there. And I wasn't even like the smartest in high school. There were like, I was not the valedictorian, and I don't think I should have been the valedictorian there. And my one buddy who was one of the valedictorians, I think, or he was the valedictorian, he went to university too to study engineering, and we went through school our first year together, and then he went to mining. And like that guy's smarter than me, works harder for it. My first year, I would just go to school, and then I would study, and then I would sleep, and then go to school, study, sleep. And I made it through with a reasonable grade, but like at, some mental health, because like I was inside all the time. Grant McEwen, it's just like a city block, no green space.
Yeah.
In winter, you get everywhere by Pedway. So I was just never outside except when I went home. And I went home to the acreage, my parents' acreage, every weekend for my first year. And then my second year, went to the U of A, little less. I wasn't there every single weekend. And by the third or fourth, like I was visiting once or twice a month, but it wasn't as homesick. And part of that was because I joined the Army. So I met a wonderful group of people who were very dedicated to like excellence, and I became also enamored with their excellence. And like I love my unit. Unfortunately, I have to leave the unit. I think I'm putting in my papers today to release so that I can go overseas. But I had a lot of support. I had men at various stages of their life that I could talk to about everything. And not that, and like before it was mostly just like my dad, and like dad was a great resource. But he had only done one route. And like he did it very well, like incredibly capable. But like now I'm in the city. Like one of the things, like I could never tell if a girl liked me, and then they'd be like, just point them out. I was like, how do you know that? Oh, well, this, and this. Oh, did you notice this? I was like, holy smokes. And the craziest part is they were right. Like they weren't wrong. And this isn't like the pickup artists or anything. These are just regular dudes who've been around long enough and can tell when people are making eyes at people. That's it, right? And it's just like I never had that. Like I was outgoing and social, but I still consider myself slightly socially awkward. Like I say that I learned to be social. I wasn't, but I was born talking. So, but like the sometimes I'd say things that wouldn't quite fit this or that, like growing up all the time. But like I loved learning, I loved talking, and eventually I learned how to talk better.
Yeah.
And that kind of part of why I wanted to start this podcast was also to practice talking. And not that I want to become an interviewer. I don't even think that's what these are about. I just like having conversations. But while in school, my marks were okay, but not great. And actually, at one point, I was on academic probation because of like my low marks. And actually, I did come back from one summer of training. That was like that was not a very good experience. That was the worst experience I've had with the military. Some people have great experience the whole way through. Some people will have a terrible experience the whole way through, and some people, most of everyone, it's mixed. You're gonna have great times, bad times. Like your work is highly stressful. It's in like terrible environments, whether it's cold. Like you're not your training isn't always like early morning, 20 degrees, nice. Sometimes it's really cold. Sometimes it's super hot. And being from Alberta, I thought I knew what heat was. Go train in Gagetown, and I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? The air won't wick away my moisture because it's so humid. Why isn't my towel drying? Like just things that like you'd never think of or consider. And wild. But
Gagetown's in
New Brunswick.
Yeah.
It's actually a very beautiful area, but it's definitely not as well off financially compared to the rest of Canada. And like a lot of the military stuff is a big driver of the economy over there. Oromocto is the town just outside, and that's where all the military people live and where a bunch of stuff gets sold to military people. And like they run it. Like, Gagetown's a pretty, I don't know. I like the training area. Not everyone does, but it's very, very different than Alberta. But as so I kind of had some issues with my grades, and then I went in to talk with I think assistant dean, or I can't remember what he'd be called. I go talk to him. He notices on my hat I have a little like Canadian Army emblem. And he asked me like, "Oh, are you in that?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm working part time in the reserves engineer." He's like, "Oh, I was an engineer in Britain."
Oh wow!
And he was a combat engineer in Britain. Or I guess it would be a field engineer at his time.
How about that?
It was wild. And he's like, "Oh, just get your grade to this mark, and then carry on through." And that was the mark that I got. No more, no less. I got the 2.6 that I needed to continue, and then
Good man.
and then went off and trained again. And then I graduated. And I went on tour. And actually, I was training before convocation, and I had to ask the Army, "Hey, I'm going to miss some training. Can I go graduate?" And at first, they were all upset because I was asking something. I was like, no, like, I've already done this.
Yeah.
It's fine. They're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead." I was like, "Okay." That's very strict because there's no other workplace like that where like they have complete control. But they maintain that by like holding leadership as like the utmost importance.
Yeah.
And like trying to root that out. And recently they've had a lot of people get out of the Army, possibly due to poor leadership, but also like COVID was a tough time in the Army because you don't join the Army to sit at home.
No.
And if you are great at your job in the Army, you're going to be even better at your job as a civilian, is what I've found. Some things don't translate very well, but like the switched on guy who's eager to learn. Yeah. And one of the things that I really did like about the Army while I was there, well, I mean, I guess I'm still there until I hand my stuff in. It's a learning organization that used to, now they're a bit more relaxed with it, but it used to have, they would say that we had no room for unimaginative leaders. And when we were at our best is when we followed that. And like before you move up in rank, training, constantly practicing. Like imagine if in a corporate world before you moved up, they sent you for training, and then like you're removed from your old space, so you're no longer in the headspace of this is what I do every day. So when you come back, you're not going to try and do your old job. No. They're training you how to do a new job and how to work with people. And usually they're training you to do one level above where your next job's going to be, so you can take over that if needed. And then you go, and you come back and you fill the role. So like I was an officer the full way through. I showed up. There were like no officers before me, or very few that had ever joined as an officer and then stayed for some reason. A lot of them, either they got them too late, they weren't in school, and they had like real big full-time careers. So it's hard to do the reserves and like, hey, I want to take off between 8 and 16 weeks for the next 3 summers. That's tough. So getting them in school is very important. But I stayed through. I got my commission. Actually, my commissioning scroll should be somewhere around here. I'll have to find that.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
I got my commissioning scroll. That was awesome. I loved and then I was the troop commander, so I was in charge of the troops. I was in charge of 40 people. So I'd go to school, I'm like learning stuff, and like I'd be, like in the field and like we got to move here and blow this up or do that. So like I was an engineer officer for Combat Engineer Regiment. Our job is to help our team live, move, and fight while denying the same to the enemy. It's very similar to all Commonwealth countries. We're very similar to the U.S. as well. And it would be like bridging, heavy equipment, mines, counter IED, but then like even more stuff. Like if the Army's unsure what to do with this new capability, they'll give it to us. So like water purification, combat diver. Now, a part-time reserve regiment in Canada is going to have a very difficult time like maintaining a detachment that like their sole purpose is like to purify water. So we don't have that, but we'll send people for that training from time to time and try and advance their careers. And most of the other officers that were there started out as a non-commissioned member and then commissioned while they were in school or just as they finished school. And but it was an incredibly rewarding experience. I met so many amazing people and soldiers. Like what they don't, like when you're playing COD or something, and I'm sure everyone hears this, but like they don't tell you about like the downtime. Like it's a lot of hurry up and wait. And everyone just loves to talk. And so everyone gathers around and talks and discuss this and discuss that. And like, it's a pretty conservative organization, but like testing out ideas, talking about what's going on in other countries. Like one of the guys that I met that was like the most knowledgeable on Eastern religions was like a pig farmer.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, or like I guess you call him a rancher, a pig ranch. Yeah, and like, yeah, and like that's what he learned about because he went to he either went to Afghanistan or was preparing to go and learned about all this stuff. And yeah, and I got in post Afghanistan, and then I deployed on Op Impact to Kuwait 2019, was there for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It was a training mission. We were headquartered in Kuwait for training missions going on in Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq. That was a very cool experience. I was there when Soleimani was killed. I was there when the Shia militia groups invaded the green demilitarized zone in Baghdad.
Mm-hmm.
That was the at the U.S. Embassy.
Yep.
I was there when Turkey invaded northern Syria, and then a whole bunch of ISIS prisoners escaped. And then I'm pretty sure they just went east to Iraq.
Mm.
And I was there when a couple of oil things got blown up. When I was there when the U.S. pulled out of Syria, and then Russia filled that space. It was like when we showed up, there was like maybe 1 or 2 rocket attacks a month.
Mm-hmm.
Just we're not actively conducting offensive operations. We're just training in Iraq. And, the Shia militia groups, the people who were supposed to be guarding our gates, were the ones rocketing us once or twice a month, and then it became like it probably like by the time I left, we were getting rocketed like every other day, or like it felt like that. Like it picked up so much, and the only thing that cooled it off, I think, was COVID.
Oh wow!
Because I came home. I came home in January, and then I was looking for work. I was getting paid and taking my leave. Got a job with CP. I had scheduled to drive down to Calgary to conduct the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID hit. They rescheduled my interview. And I don't want to brag, I was probably the first tele-interview. And I hate those so much now in particular. But I interviewed and I got the job. And I started working for CP right at the start of the pandemic. So super blessed and thankful that the company, still hired me, and we were still. And I worked the entire pandemic, and like I was just about to sign a contract with the Army to tell them like you could have me for a year, because like the economy doesn't look very good. So just have me for a year and I'll do Army stuff.
Yeah.
And I would have been just paid to sit at home, which would have been terrible.
Yeah.
But when COVID came up, like, we're gonna be fighting each other if you're concerned about this virus, like, like. Let's figure this out, like, instead of like conducting I imagine that's what they're thinking, because also they weren't in the news anymore, right? And a lot of what these kind of smaller, whether they're terrorist cells or these smaller groups that have offensive operations going on, they're really trying to leverage Western media. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. If you can make it in the news, like that's huge. Especially if you can make it in the news and be like, oh, the U.S. is doing bad stuff. But alternatively, if you make it in the news for you doing bad stuff, it still helps, right? Like back when like ISIS was leveraging social media. It was very very interesting.
Well, it carries a lot of clout, so you can see why they sort of made that a point for their marketing, in a not great sense.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I came back and adjusted. It took me probably 3 months to program my Western brain on like how things work. Like I would assume, a Shia militia group, it's a militia. Oh, it reports to Iraq. Well, no, it's funded by both Iraq and Iran. It more responds to Iran because they're Shia, but it's still a legitimate arm of the defense force in Iraq, and we're in Iraq, and they're the ones rocketing us at night. But the Iraq military, you can't call them actual Iraqis because they're all Iraqis, but the Iraq military was, friendly and wanted stuff, and it was wild.
I have a question with the bombing. Did you become used to it once it started to become a daily occurrence, multiple times a day? Is that something that you just adopted as your new norm?
So I never was in Iraq because I was just in Kuwait. But everyone that I talked to, even from Afghanistan, like it was like so normal to them. Like there's a story, and I'll never forget this. And I think it just shows like how normalized it does become with the rocketing and stuff from them. It was when they killed when the U.S. killed Soleimani, the Expeditionary General of Iran. He landed. And like, here's how good the intelligence was. Like, he landed in Iraq, and within 5 minutes, he'd hopped in a car. They'd driven around the airport and around this wall, and he was dead.
Wow.
Plane landed, 5 minutes, dead, and like confirmed because there's like a photo of like a severed finger with a ring on it, and like a photo of him waving at a crowd with the ring on, and you're like, that's the same ring. That's the guy. And so Iran then was moving like ballistic missiles into range of where I was in Kuwait. And, I was like, well, I knew it was going to be dangerous when I was here potentially, but, relatively safe. And, we were at the mess, we were getting food, and someone asked me, hey, Marshall, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm doing good. But I have a question. What happens if the rockets start landing? And the response was this. No one made fun of me. No one teased me. They just said, well, by the time you realize what happened, it'll be over. So you can either stay in your room, or if you follow directions, which you probably should do, go outside, get low, get beside like a wall or something that might protect you from shrapnel from one side or another, and then just wait to be called out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. And this was someone who had deployed in the Vast, and he was a door gunner in Afghanistan, and by the time you figure out what's going on, it'll be over. You could just stay there. They're not good shots or something like that. Like, because there was still protective measures, but I think something like 10% or 5% of whatever they've flung at us might make it through, if it's all flown at once.
Yeah.
But then where the story really gets interesting is my coworker, my friend. He then asked me, "So you're gonna get some ice cream for dessert?" And I said, "Well, no, I didn't make it to the gym today. I don't think I can justify ice cream." And I sat there and I thought, wait a second, I might not wake up tomorrow. I went and I got a cherry cobbler and I covered it in ice cream and I ate that cherry cobbler, and it was the best cherry cobbler I've ever had.
I bet.
But I was just like, and then like I've taken that story and I've shared it a lot, and that's something I want to take with me forever. And like, you do need to put short-term gains aside for long-term gains, but like if you're not having fun and like you don't think it's actually going to be that much worth it in the end, like getting an education, I think it's worth it. But like if you get an education and you're like, I don't really like this, maybe I should go back for another, like, is there something else you can do without having to go back and do another 4 years? Like, unless you like, if you loved school, well, now you're actively enjoying it. Yeah. But if you're thinking, I'm going to put myself through like hell again to hopefully do something because someone told me this is what you're supposed to do in life, like you're going to be so you got to learn, like most of your life, you're not living in the future, you're living the present, actually all of it. And if you're not happy in the present, you're going to have a very unhappy life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, eat some ice cream from time to time. But.
And wear sunscreen.
Probably don't eat too much. Yeah. Well, I don't actually wear sunscreen. I just tan. But yeah, other folks should probably wear some sunscreen.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting to see how, you mentioned the dry heat and the humid heat from. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what it's like for you over there.
So Kuwait is just up the Gulf from the UAE, and I told the story earlier. I thought I knew what heat was. Went to New Brunswick, and I was like, okay, now I know what heat is. We got up to like 40 some degrees. It was insane. I was like, oh man, we don't get this, and it's like hot everywhere because it's humid. And I went to Kuwait, and I showed up at night, and it took me like an hour and a half because I was so messed up from like not sleeping to get out of the airport. Like it was wild. And then I get out, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's kind of warm, it's like 30 some degrees at night. And it was 50, it got up to over 50 degrees regularly. And like the stuff that I like learned was stuff that I learned about life is like, yeah, sometimes your environment's too hot to touch. That's why you must have gloves. Like you can't just like open a gate without gloves on. Sometimes, the wind there, it's like an oven. So the wind doesn't cool you down, it heats you up. And I was blown away. Like that changed my life, knowing that the wind isn't always a saving grace, even if it's dry, even if it's really dry. And I think those were the two big things. And then like the sand and the dust getting everywhere was pretty rough. But it was and like I knew it was going to be really hot there, but I didn't know that level, because you also have to be covered up. Like I definitely wore sunscreen there, and I definitely I had like a scarf on and everything to be covered up to protect yourself, and it was so hot. It's unbelievable.
That's something that I would like to experience. That sort of heat
Yeah.
in that sort of context as well. Maybe not necessarily the military, but the location for sure.
Well, come over, come visit us in July next year.
Oh, if the invitation's open, dude.
Oh, it's open. Yeah. I think I'm gonna try and set something up where I'll have like a calendar or something for people to populate when they want to come. And like I would love to just have a constant flow of visitors coming and seeing, and then like I would love to take this opportunity and just share it as much as I can with everyone. Anyone who's, because it's pretty pricey to get over there. But if you don't have to pay for a hotel or anything, the hope is you're able to like stretch that price out over a 2-week or a 3-week period. And like the food and stuff is pretty comparable to Canada. A lot of the expenses are actually pretty comparable to Canada. Learning about that made me like ask why Canada's so expensive. And it's because we live so far apart is one of the biggest reasons. Like logistic costs are just through the roof. But no, I think that'd be wild. Now, kind of circling back a little bit, so you went to France, and you were playing rugby and going to school. And the schooling was to finish up your business degree.
Yeah.
And were you there? Like, how many semesters were you there for? Just 1 year, or how long?
So I was in France for 1 year, finishing off my degree online, which I was lucky enough to be able to do. And I had positioned it where a lot of my tail end stuff was electives. So. So they were interesting subjects, and I could spend my time doing that and also enjoying my French experience, right? And for me, that was another great year, learning and meeting people. Like you've already mentioned before, the people you come across and the stories that you hear from people from unexpected places. And the unexpected information, it sits with you forever, and that's invaluable, and it's something you can't get without. It's something that you are exposed to because you took that opportunity and that risk to try something new and to travel and to put yourself in unknown places and situations.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, with everyone shutting down for COVID, so my wife was going to school. And she does pay full price for her tuition, and like the instruction wasn't as good, and all of these things. And like my thought would be, like when I have kids, like if they want to do online schooling, like do it wherever you want. Like even if you're going to like University of Athabasca or Athabasca College, I can't remember which one it is in Canada. They do a lot of online stuff. Do it and then just don't be here. Do it anywhere. You get the advantage. I mean, maybe you'd have to like finagle some tax stuff or something. Like, you get the advantage of having your tuition partially covered by taxpayers, and you don't have to be in Canada.
Yeah,
or be wherever in Canada you want. Like, why go up to go live in a cabin?
Yeah,
and then just like make sure you got your what's it called? Starlight, Elon Musk's GPS. Well, not GPS, but all the satellites that'll hopefully give everyone internet. Like, just have that running, and hopefully it's good enough just to submit your paperwork. And
and it seems like the product does work. From Elon Musk. So it's good. We actually have one up at the farm.
Cool.
Up north. So Gidda's folks have Starlink. Is it?
Yeah.
And
Starlink,
it comes pizza-sized box. It does what it says. It seems to work pretty well. So, the accessibility and basically the learning you can do online. And I mean, even I think Elon Musk and some of the other intelligentsia.
Yeah.
They, you can learn a lot online without any standard form of education or a structure, and if you're motivated and driven enough, you can understand things pretty well.
And you can, what I found crazy and awesome is like the boom of business for like selling and, you know, moving goods and services. You can now have access to markets that you would never have access to without the internet. And, you know, like a lot of people like to hate on all these billionaires and stuff, but like, so, you know, if you care about the environment, Elon Musk is making solar panels and he's making cars, but probably the number one impact that he would ever have on humans would be giving, like, leveling the playing field. Everyone gets internet. And now everyone has access to information, and everyone has access to, you know, markets. And if you can get really good at making, like Victoria just showed me pretty much the timeline of this one girl who I think is not in Edmonton. There's one girl who was studying in school, some business type thing, and then was like really good at making like prints, kind of like on your shirt there, but like like all the girls nowadays, like it seems to be the rage, all these like floral prints that you can like put on things, so you could get like a notebook with like a nice looking print, and that's what she just designs and makes. And she went from like doing this as a hobby and to make a little bit of money while in school to like she just opened up a storefront. And she just like quickly showed me through like these were all the steps that it took to get there, and she documented it on her Instagram or whatever. So she'll be able to look back on it, and her kids and other people can actually study what she did.
Exactly.
You know, without having to like, you know, go to a school, study all these businesses. You could just like flip through Instagram and watch what people are up to. Yeah. And man, that's amazing.
It is. It's incredible. And I think, you know, everyone today at least has a good opportunity with some basic tools to be able to, you know, do something and learn something and then create something of value. And it's incredibly interesting these days. It seems that a lot of people want to see, and for me personally as well, whenever I do some research and looking into topics of interest, I find myself drawn to people who are, you know, showing me how they're going through their steps, not just, oh, this is what I do and I do it well. It's how did you go through that? And, oh, you made mistakes, you're human, so am I. So this is a great thing that I can see, and it's more relatable, right? And it's real, and it all works together. So I feel people are looking for a much more authentic story along with whatever it is they happen to be selling.
Yeah, and with like even beyond selling, like the actual personality types, like if you look at YouTube and the biggest personalities on YouTube, people feel legitimate connection. Like I don't care. Well, sorry, I'm going to rephrase this. Yeah, you could be a big, you know, I'm blanking on his name. He played Charles Bronson. He played Bane in Batman. He played Tom Hardy. You could be a huge Tom Hardy fan, but can you really say like you know them intimately? And yeah, they're still selling a product, all these YouTubers, but like people who spend like a significant amount of hours consuming a lot of content can learn a lot about them, and they feel like they're part of it in a way that like me watching a movie, I don't feel part of it. And I think that's very interesting that's what people want more of. And even the barrier of entry is so low. Like before, if you wanted a podcast, it wasn't a podcast, it was a talk show. And, you know, you had to be, you know, you were in the States, and they even found that like talk shows that started in the Eastern US always got like more listeners because they could also be listened to by those in the Western US before work. So the perfect time slot was like two things: location, Eastern US, and the time where you're going to catch people going to work in like New York and LA, and you'll be listened to. And I think that was Howard Stern, and the equipment would be expensive, and you'd have to have a whole industry to relay everything. The same thing goes with cameras and stuff. Like you want to make a video to have a good quality, but like this is like studio quality equipment, and I probably spent too much money on it, but I also used it for my wedding. I hooked up I had to jerry rig a couple of things, but I was able to like run mics and power things through the soundboard, and I could record speeches. So I have audio recordings of some of the. Oh no, I didn't do that for my wedding, and I realized I forgot. But I used this for another wedding, and I was able to record speeches from some of the parents, and like that'll be very special. I've got videos of mine, but just having an audio recording too, I think would be very special, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I spent less than $2,000 on it. The alternative back in the 90s was $1 million conglomerate. That's what it took to run something like this. And now it's like, now all you need is a phone.
Yep.
And just record yourself on the phone, post it online.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the same for videos. You could, I mean, I think TikTok is all done on phones. So I don't know. I'm not a big TikTok guy.
Yeah, I'm not a TikToker.
TikToker. The kids will be listening. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's funny. And then did you go anywhere after France?
So I traveled in amongst that,
Okay.
but my next live away from Australia experience was Canada. So
Okay.
I came to Canada in 2016,
Mhm.
and I was not far from Gagetown in Moncton, New Brunswick.
You were in Moncton. Oh, okay.
So I spent about 2 years there.
Why did you go to New Brunswick?
Well,
It's a
chasing
nice
tail.
place, but
So, so
okay.
that's essentially the story, and
Yeah.
and it was a good story, and I had a great time in Moncton. It's still one of my favorite spots in Canada,
Yeah.
and I've seen a limited amount of Canada, but out of the spots that I have seen from the east to the west coast,
It's really beautiful country out there.
Mhm.
It's gorgeous. I remember being out in the field, right? And you're having a terrible time, and you look around, you're like, wow,
Mhm.
this is very nice.
Yeah, and like everything's in context, and
Yeah.
it's with the people, and
Yeah,
yeah,
people.
I find they've got a lot of Irish music out that way as
Yeah.
well, and the Rankin family is something that I was
Yeah. Yeah, you know of
introduced
the
to.
Rankin family?
I know.
Oh
I
my
feel
goodness.
the same way too.
I got to see
So-
them. I got to see them play.
Oh, okay. Talk to me about that.
Alberta was on fire, and Alberta was on fire a number of years ago,
Mm.
and then like all these artists, like Canadian artists, came to like help pay for. I think it was Fort McMurray when it burned up,
Mhm.
to help like get money to donate. And like, so you had like Dallas Smith, you had Nickelback, and like the Rankin family was there, and I didn't know they were
Nice.
gonna be there. And like, but for like, I knew some of their songs, and I really liked some of them.
Mhm.
And they started playing. I got super excited, and my wife was just like, "Why weren't you born like 40 years ago? Why can't you be cool?" And I was like, "You didn't marry me because I was cool. You actually married me for the opposite reason, because I wasn't cool." But yeah, just like my that's so wild that's what you picked up. I was on, actually this was back when I was a cadet. Have you ever heard of Buddy Was His Name and the Other Fellers?
No.
They're an Eastern European. Well, maybe I'll show you some music after.
I'd love to
They're
hear
an not Eastern European, Eastern Canadian, like Newfie
Okay.
band,
Yeah.
and it's like I was on, as I talked about it, and my dad had a cassette in his old Sunfire that we would listen to, and one of the songs on it was about hunting for moose, so we'd listen to it while hunting.
Oh.
And a lot of them I could probably still sing them now. You'd have to play the music so it would jog my memory as
yeah.
I'm singing it. Yeah, and just someone was like, "How do you know about that? I thought Alberta hated the East Coast." I was like, "No, Alberta doesn't hate the East Coast. We just, wish we had more say in spending the money that was generated here."
Yeah.
And just and then there's this other gentleman. He does Barrett's Privateers. That's a very fond song of some of the people in my life. I'll have to. Oh, I don't want that playing. Let me just write these down so I remember to show you these after. At least send them to you.
Yeah.
So Buddy Was His Name, the Other Fellers, and then the other one was I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who sings Barrett Privateers. That's that guy's like an old school cat that I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Okay.
That like made a bunch of like very famous songs for Canadians.
I love my Canadian education, so this is
Privateers.
furthering it.
Yeah, and Buddy was his name. Okay.
Whilst you're writing that down, there is a group of people that think that Gustav Whitehead, changed from Weisskopf, was actually the first person to fly, not the Wright brothers,
Really?
as the American marketing would suggest. So I came across this information and I feel like I want to share it at this point because I find it just a very interesting topic. And
Okay, tell me about it.
well, so according to the Wright brothers, they flew at certain times and they had pictures that have some questionable consistency and congruity.
Yeah.
And this has been tested by people who built the same sort
Replicas.
of plane, replica of the same plane, and trying to get that thing to fly today or in the 90s still didn't work
Yeah.
as it was suggested it was.
Hmm.
Whereas Gustav Whitehead actually created a plane that still today, when built as a replica, flies and flies very well, and actually has some really interesting aerodynamics and airfoils, which helped pioneer pretty much a lot of the aviation industry.
And where's this guy from?
So he was a German,
Yeah.
but at the time, you didn't really want, especially. There's a lot of marketing that goes into a lot of stories,
Yeah.
and having a German at front page news is not always, at certain times, wasn't maybe the nicest thing to hear for either morale or for, storylines. So,
Yeah.
but incredibly interesting guy, and it was information that I'd come across that I thought was pretty special, and hopefully by mentioning it, just furthering it a little bit more.
Yeah. It sounds like big plane trying to shut down the German little guy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny, right? Because I mean, we were talking just previously about information and how
Mhm.
it's
Accessibility.
accessibility, and also about how maybe sometimes things have been doctored at certain times, certain scripture or certain notes. People tend to add, and I mean, people have been doing it for years. They take away certain information,
Yeah.
and throughout history, when conquerors conquer, they try and wipe out a lot of really good information, which is pretty unfortunate, but that seems to be a pattern that we follow.
Well, even just like companies, and as the time change and become accepting, like they will destroy and change things and distance themselves from things just to try and make themselves look better now, and instead of like saying, yeah, we did this and it was wrong, and this is what we learned, and here's how not to do that in the future, because that's a bit more useful information than just like sloughing it under the rug. But everyone's so concerned with PR. Like we're holding everyone in companies, everything up to like a standard, like a standard that's nigh on unattainable. And then, but if the guy's on my side, I'll make an excuse for him, or or if I like this person, right? Like stuff like you know what? I don't want to name anything. I was thinking of people who did some bad stuff, but that just sounds sad. But I don't know, just or even sometimes it'll be conversations where I'll say something along the lines of like, look, like if this happened, it's terrible, but I don't know if it happened, and just like I don't have to defend the guy. I just have to say, hey, like that sounds terrible, but I'm not sure that's how that played out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll leave a conversation or a party or something, and someone will be maybe upset with something that I might have said, or or thinking that I'm condoning something. Like no, no, standard caveats apply. We should be as uplifting as possible and help people, and intents not to cause harm. But that's not how I viewed the conversation going, or that's not how I viewed this event going. Like we definitely, and just being able to be like, we got to take good with the bad, and then just be able to be like, well, I don't actually have to defend this or that. I just need to be like, well, there's some good, and then if this happened, then that's terrible. It didn't happen again.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because it's like, I mean, can you say any one thing is inherently good or bad, or one person good or bad? I think we're all a large mixture of a lot of it, and it's a very human thing. And circling back to the businesses, it's it would be just nice to hear guys,
Yeah.
I bug it up.
Yeah.
We'll get better, and let's carry on.
And what I would love even more than that is we're a business. Like obviously we messed up, but just like we're a business, we're not a humanitarian company. I don't want to get washed up, and anyone can buy Coke. I don't have to tell you that these specific groups can buy it or that these people can't buy it. Anyone can buy Coke.
Yeah.
Just don't be mean when you're making Coke.
Yeah.
like don't break any laws. Pay your taxes. Be reasonable.
Yeah.
But I also don't need everyone crusading. Not every financial decision I make should be clouded in an ethical, decision of choices. If there's people doing bad stuff, I won't support them. But I don't need you to, sell me stuff. I recently saw a Bud Light advertisement, and it had like rainbows and stuff on it for like the LGBT community, and it was just like, why? And like I didn't realize that people like didn't drink Bud Light because they didn't think that Bud Light supported it, and like it's with the times, and it's for money. Like that's the thing, it's for money. It's not for the right reasons. They're just like trying to look hip and cool.
Okay.
And yeah.
So they're jumping on the
bandwagon.
Yeah, the bandwagon of the welcome I can't understand why they do certain things. It kind of seems, it seems if they have to point it out, it's kind of a thing that is maybe not genuine.
Maybe if it was nuanced, it just feels like they're just trying to sell something too much, right? Like when I went to Kuwait, I spent 6 months with barely any ads.
Yes.
And then I came back, there was ads everywhere. And all they were trying to do is sell me stuff, right? Whether it was a lifestyle or this or that. And it's like, hey, like knowing that a product exists is nice, but like, like it's particularly advertising that really gets me. And like when Pepsi did the thing with Kendall Jenner. Do you remember that advertisement? Pepsi had an advertisement with Kendall Jenner. She was doing some like photo shoot thing, and she was wearing a blonde wig, and she saw these people protesting, and someone kind of looks at her and tells her to come along, and then she like takes her wig off, and now she's a brunette. Now she's in the crowd, and they go meet these cops. And like it looks like something's gonna happen, and then like she takes her Pepsi and she hands it to the cop. The cop takes a sip, and then everyone has a party.
That was the ad.
That was the ad. That's phoned in.
Wow.
That's phoned in. A lot of people got upset, and I think they pulled it, which is a very strange thing to get upset about. Because like, shouldn't we be preaching all this stuff? It's like, we'll just no.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't know. You know what? It is personal preference, though. If you like it, like, have at it. If you want them to do it, like I shouldn't stop you from asking companies to put more of that out. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't like. I think it's just advertisements that irk me.
I'm completely with you on. By the way, this is an ad-free podcast, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. That'd be pretty funny. Yeah. This is a perfect sponsor. On my other podcast, I create fake sponsors. Just really funny, just like fake,
what
fake
would we
advertisement.
do for right now,
if we were to do one, yeah. No. I would sell advertising. I would be like, I would just like bash advertising and be like, speaking of advertising. I would sell the advertisement right now. That's what I would do.
You got a 30-second spot.
Yeah, 30 seconds. We'll talk about the price. It'd come up right about now. I'd sell that. I'd sell my advertisement so that other people could advertise. That's what I would do.
That's gold.
Do you find yourself, you're looking for more, you're looking for more consumers, but you don't know where to get them? I know where. This podcast. We got 10 views on the last podcast uploaded. That's 10 more people that will definitely buy it because I know them.
Yeah.
That's my mom and her friends listening to this podcast. They will buy whatever you try to sell on this podcast.
That's called influence.
Yeah, influence. That's a higher level of influence. You get Joe Rogan, millions upon millions of people will buy your product. But do you want all of my people to buy your product? That's right, a portion of his people. 1% of people buying the product. Do you want 100%? I can sell you 100%.
Well, sign me up.
Yeah, perfect. That's hilarious.
Yeah, speaking about ads, I personally, I can do with a lot less ads in life.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is reading through a lot of the old, and I've been exposed to it, the old Equinox, the Canadian, National Geographic,
Okay.
the Canadian Geographic. It's incredible in its own right. So it is a similar feel to the National Geographic, and going through that, the ads of yesteryear are really interesting to dissect, and it's really interesting to see. And I mean, you can look up these videos on YouTube as well, and some of them are actually quite shocking and wouldn't be the taste of today.
Yeah.
But I find them interesting because it says a lot about the time and a lot of what's important. Some haven't changed and some have, but the storyline's still similar, just in a different flavor, really.
Yeah. Funnily enough, that now that you mention it, I'm surprisingly more okay with ads in print. I find ads, maybe I was conditioned for it, but I find ads in print less. So, like, for example, right, hunting magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading and I'm thinking about hunting, and a lot of hunting has to do with products. You need a rifle, a scope, ammunition, and you can either go to the store to learn about new products and ask people, but like I've never done that in my life. I've never just gone to a store because I want to learn about the new technology for like canoeing or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll Google it now. I'll search it up online. But being able to like on a page read about something and then like see something, I'm more okay with that as long as it's not too much. Because if it's too much, it becomes tacky.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I'm actually surprisingly okay with that now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, and I guess maybe they're specific.
Yeah.
And they're things that you are quite interested in.
Yeah.
But I agree. Print, because I can choose to look at it or not.
Yeah.
But when something shows up on
TV,
a phone or TV, it's like, well, I didn't quite, I wasn't ready for that.
I didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dinner first, and then you can show me your goods.
Yeah. Well, Christmas catalogs. That's what I first was thinking of, and it's like, that's an ad. But I'm like, before there was online and you could just search for what people are selling. Like that was the way to figure out what products are out there. And like I think it was Sears used to sell log cabins back in like the 1800s. Yeah. And you could order a log cabin to get shipped to you with instructions, and then you build the log cabin. I feel like it was Sears or some other like, defunct Canadian company like that. And you would order it from a magazine, and you would mail them the order, and they would ship it by rail to you, and you could take it all and then go build your cabin. That would be cool.
That would be cool. I was just thinking, in some of these old magazines, they still have numbers and addresses of all businesses, and you mail in your order. It'd be funny if you actually mail in and see if that would be received or not today, and see if you could start a conversation with somebody. Probably just get lost in transit.
Yeah, probably.
But it's some of the print ads, I think they're much more palatable than a lot of electronic stuff. But ads in general, I think you're right. Like the time that you had away from ads, I mean, they don't always add value. And if you're looking for, a life that's filled with value, sometimes not hearing about how much you need something that you don't really need is a good thing.
Well, there's a stretch between Canmore and Calgary where you're driving and it's gorgeous. You got the Rocky Mountains in the background, and then all of a sudden for like 10 kilometers, every kilometer there's an ad.
It's a
giant ad on the side of the road, and it's like
it takes away from what you're there for, which is not whatever it happened to be advertising at that point.
They're just trying to plant a thought that you didn't ask for.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because when I heard this, it was incredible. So the neuroscientists say 6 to 8 exposures, and you are already influenced by something, or you can't not undo that, which is such an incredibly powerful thing. So they know that if they get you on the radio on the way to work, they have a billboard that you go past on your way to work.
Mhm.
They get you at your computer when you're at work. They get you on your phone in the afternoon when you're checking your phone and not doing work. And then again on the radio when you get back home, or TV at night. It's like, we are continually bombarded with thoughts and ideas about how to live, how to purchase, and some of it's not necessarily with the greatest intent. So, and a lot of people are unfortunately not quite open to that viewpoint.
Mhm.
And it's easy to just it's easy to be overwhelmed by it, because when you start paying attention to how much you're influenced by a lot of outside information, and how much you have a choice of actually listening to, you don't have a lot of choice in listening to a lot of information.
Well, I mean, and this is something that I've been telling people for quite some time. What change do you want to make in your life? You want to go to the gym more? Find friends that go to the gym and spend as much as time as possible with them. You want to become more open? Find open people and spend as much as time with them as possible. They will rub off on you. You want to pick up a new skill, hang out with instruments, hang out with musicians. Doesn't even have to be your they don't even have to play the same instrument as you. But like, number one way to influence yourself is just to choose who you're going to spend time with, and it's not really what, it's who.
Yeah.
And they will rub off on you, and you'll rub off on them in a very good way. And I remember I had an ex, and I went to from a completely different friend group, and I went to one of the parties, and I was there, and there was this there's a young man, good looking guy, Spider-Man costume, and he was selling tires at Costco, and changing tires. And I was like, oh, are you trying to become a mechanic? Do you think you're gonna go try and get a blue book? Are you testing this out? He's like, nope. Oh, well, what are you doing? Oh, I'm working at Costco. And then I looked around, and no one was doing anything. And if you're content with that, that's actually probably better than not being content with it, because then you're going to be constantly trying to fill a hole. But I was so spread, and I realized, part of why I'm always saying yes and doing things is because my friends and family and close acquaintances are doing yes and doing everything. In the Army, right, that pursuit of excellence that the Army has, I was pursuing the same excellence, and it rubbed off on me.
Yep.
And even this conversation here, right, I got someone to learn about, you got some music to listen to, we're rubbing off on each other. And so, if you, if you're looking to, I actually was looking at divorce rates recently. For some reason, me and the wife, we get in very interesting conversations that aren't usually arguments, but and then you're pulling up weird stats, trying to figure stuff out.
Oh yeah.
And the number way to combat against divorce is don't spend time with divorced people.
Well, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. Well, maybe not the number one, but I think it was 30% more likely if you have a friend, or your spouse has a friend that's divorced. And it's that sometimes makes sense, because looking back at other groups that I've seen, people are just getting married right now. Someone's getting divorced right now in my life. I mean, that's very short marriage. But there's just groups where that's what happened. All of them almost got divorced. And so just, if that doesn't tell you anything, aside from don't hang out with divorced people if you don't want to be divorced, find whatever you're interested, whatever you're trying to do, whether you're trying to lose weight or learn a new skill or learn a language, be with people who speak the language. That's it.
Exactly.
That's
right.
it. Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with what you and who you want to be like. It works. I mean, you adopt and trait transference. It's incredible.
It's very, what's tough though, and what I've seen some people have a very tough time with though, is cutting the negative influences out. Particularly when they're friends. But I remember asking someone once, why are you friends with this person? Walk me through this. Yes, they're here, it's convenient. But is your friendship built on convenience? When was the last time they asked you to do something?
Yeah.
And I've seen this one person in my life, their friend group is completely changed. And for so much better, and like
Oh,
just
that's good.
and like I'm just so happy
Yeah.
for them, and just like seeing all these amazing people, and you can tell that they're happier and they're supported, and everyone's supporting each other. Yeah, it's just wild.
It has a huge impact. So you really need to surround yourself by the right people.
Yeah, for sure. But with that, I think we'll cut it here for today. I wouldn't be surprised if we do this again though before I go, or over Skype or something, and if they allow Skype there. But thanks very much for coming on, Jay
Thank you for
Johnson.
having me.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you later, and hopefully I'll see you in the UAE.
Absolutely.
Or
It's
I'll-
been a good conversation.
Yeah,
I
and if
appreciate
I don't make it there, I'll see you here.
it. Yeah.
So all right, take
Okay.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.